So good day, sir. Uh, we're here to report about the Philippine resource generation system, including sources of funds for government operation, principles or canons of taxations, purposes of taxation, kinds of taxes, taxation in the Philippines experience. So my topic is about sources of funds for government operations. So in this topic, um, the source of funding is about companies always seeks sources of funding to grow their business. Funding, also called financing, represent an act or contributing resources to finance a program, project, or need. Funding can be initiated for either short-term or long-term purposes. So we have three different sources of funding, included retained earning, debt capital, and equity capital. So retained earnings, it talks about the business aim to maximize profits by selling a product or rendering service for a price higher than what it costs them to produce the goods. It is the most primitive source of funding for any company. Alternatively, the company can invest the money into a new project, say building a new factory or partnering with other companies to create a joint venture. The second one is the debt capital. Debt capital. Companies obtain debt financing privately through bank loans. They can also source new funds by issuing debt to the public. Borrowing money through debt is that borrowers need to make interest payment as well as principal repayments on time. Failure to do so may lead the borrower to default or bankruptcy. And lastly, the equity capital. Equity capital can raise funds from the public in exchange for a proportionate ownership stake in the company in the form of shares issued to investors who become shareholders after purchasing the shares. Private equity financing can be an option provided there are entities or individuals in the company's or directors network ready to invest in a project or wherever the money is needed for. However, one advantage of equity capital funding is sharing profit among all shareholders in the long term. More importantly, shareholders dilute a company's ownership control as long as it sells more shares. So, in so this is in my summary on my in my report. The main source of funding are retained earnings, debt capital, and equity capital. Also, companies use retained earnings from business operation to expand or distribute dividends to their shareholders. Businesses raise funds by borrowing debt privately from a bank or by going public. And lastly, companies obtain equity funding by exchanging ownership right for cash coming from equity investors. That's all. Thank you.
So the next topic is about purposes of a taxation. So the purposes and justifications for taxation. The most basic function of taxation is to fund government expenditures. Varying justification and explanations for taxes have been offered throughout history. Early taxes were used to support the ruling classes, raise armies, and build defenses. Often, the authority to tax stemmed from divine or supranational national right. The importance of different types of taxes in the Philippines. The Philippine government relies on tax revenue to fund its operations and finance its development projects. Being the lifeblood of the government, tax revenue is a critical part of the country's economy and fiscal policy. Aside from the revenue the taxes generate, they also help promote economic stability and growth by imposing taxes on goods and services. The government can discourage unnecessary consumption and production and ensure that resources are used more efficiently. And the next is we have different types of taxation. We have an income tax, corporate tax, capital gains, property tax, inheritance, and sales tax. So, in income tax, government impose income taxes on financial income generated by all entities within their jurisdiction, including individuals and business. Next is the corporate tax. This type of tax is imposed on the profit of a business. Next is the capital gains. Capital gains is a tax on capital gains is imposed on any capital gains or profits made by people or businesses from the sale of certain assets, including stocks, bonds, or real estate. Next is property tax. A property tax is assessed by a local government and paid for by the owner of a property. This tax is calculated based on the property and land values. Next is inheritance, a type of tax levied on individuals who inherit the estate of a deceased person. And last is the sales tax, a consumption tax imposed by a government on the sale of goods and services. This can take the form of value added tax or VAT, a goods and services tax or GST, a state or provincial sales tax or an excise tax. So, in canon, the principles and canons of taxation, we have eight, which is um, canon of productivity, canon of elasticity, canon of simplicity, canon of diversity, canon of stringency, canon of flexibility, convenience, and economy. We have a canon of a certainty. The canon of certainty ensures that the taxpayer should have full knowledge about his tax payment, which includes the amount to be paid. Next is the canon of economy. The canon of economy, keeping in view the above mentioned purpose, states that the cost of collecting taxes should be minimal as possible. Next is the canon of equality. Canon of, canon of equality, every person should pay to the government according to his ability to pay that is proportion of the income or the revenue. Next is the canon of convenience. Canon of convenience can be understood as an extension of canon of certainty, where canon of certainty states that the taxpayer should be well aware. Next is the canon of productivity. By virtue of the canon of productivity, it is better to have fewer taxes with large revenues rather than more taxes with lesser amounts of the revenue. Next is the canon of elasticity. Canon of elasticity, a tax should be sufficiently elastic in yield. The amount of tax ought to be so contrived that it can be varied in accordance. Next is the canon of simplicity. The canon of simplicity, the system of taxation should not be complicated and difficult to be understood by an average person. Next is the canon of diversity. Canon of diversity refers to the diversifying the tax sources in order to be more prudent and flexible. Being heavily dependent on a single tax source can be. Next is canon of expediency. A tax should be expedient or beneficial so that the government may defend itself against public criticism by arguing for its needs. Canon of flexibility states that the entire tax system should be flexible enough to allow taxes to be readily increased or decreased in response. So, next is the convenience. Convenience means that both the timing as well as the method of payment are convenient for the taxpayers. That means the tax system should be designed in a way. And the last is the economy. The canon of economy implies that the cost of tax collection should be minimum. Additional canons with the passage of time more canons were developed to be better. And that's our topic for our report. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Abdul Wahid Abdullah and this is my report. The Philippine Resource Generation System. We at the Department of Energy, DOE, have committed to pursue national development through the twofold agenda of attaining energy independence and implementing power market reforms, which we have affirmed in our Philippine Energy Plan. Philippine Energy Plan 2020 to 2040 as the country faced a multi-faceted challenge on its pandemic response programs amidst the imposed lockdowns on economic activities. The Department of Energy DOE is presenting a track to attain an inclusive and equitable economic growth made possible through the provision of secure, sustainable, and resilient energy strategies. The Philippine Energy Plan PFP 2020 to 2040 is the second comprehensive energy blueprint supporting the government's long-term vision known as Ambition Natin 2040. This updated plan, like its predecessor PEP 2018 to 2040, reiterates the energy sector's goal to chart a transformative direction towards attaining a clean energy future. Um, Kumbaga sabi dito, habang naharap daw ang bansa sa maraming aspetong hamon sa mga programang pagtugon sa pandemya nito, sa gitna ng itinataw ng mga paglak sa mga aktibidad sa ekonomiya, ang Department of Energy or ang DOE ay nagpapakita ng isang landas upang makamit ang isang inklusibo at patas na paglago ng ekonomiya na naging possible pamamagitan ng magkakaloob ng ligtas, napapanatiling at nababanat ng mga diskarte sa enerhiya. So, what is the importance of finance of the government? Importance of finance to the government is to pay for their functions and offer products and services to residents. Government must be able to collect taxable income. Public finance can also assist governments in managing national debt, resolving budgetary issues, and investigating spending that is not sufficiently paid by taxes. Thank you.